Violent right-wing groups in Bolivia attacked the campaign offices and supporters of the ruling party. Polls have closed in Tunisia as citizens elect a new president. And violent protests were reignited this weekend in Hong Kong. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Camila Escalante. Violent opposition groups in Bolivia have intensified their tactics to prevent the re-election of President Evo Morales, with elections just over 1 month away. Video has emerged of activists linked to the pro-Santa Cruz Civic Committee attacking 3 campaign offices of the Movement Towards Socialism party, setting fire to at least one of those offices and assaulting the people inside. The attacks have mostly taken place in the department of Santa Cruz, recognized to be the most affluent in Bolivia. The government has condemned these violent groups as racist and fascist and has called on people to avoid any confrontations. Most opinion polls place President Evo Morales in the lead for the general election scheduled for October 20th.
Bolivia's National Electoral Court has announced that all preparations for October's elections are advancing according to schedule, and also disclosed the total number of citizens eligible to vote.
7,315,364 citizens are eligible to vote, both inside the country and from abroad, and just over 30,000 are ineligible to vote.
With this data, essential stages of the electoral process and roadmap will be resolved.
On Friday, September 20, a public draw will be held to select poll station workers from the list of all eligible voters.
Meanwhile, President Evo Morales has warned about the resurgence of violent and racist opposition groups in the city of Santa Cruz, where this week they attacked ruling party campaign offices.
I want to ask all international observers, no matter where they come from, even from the US, to see who the anti-democracy groups in Bolivia are, where they come from, and what plans they are hatching to undo our democracy. Brothers and sisters, everyone who supports this democratic and cultural revolution, we cannot fall in the game of the right wing. They are simply trying to provoke us.
On October 20th, Bolivia will go to the polls to vote for president, vice president, senators, and members of Congress. 9 political parties will participate, out of which 8 are opposition parties, since they failed at presenting one single candidate, like they had initially promised, to face off against incumbent President Evo Morales.
On Saturday, the United Nations Secretary General took an aerial tour of the Abaco Islands in the Bahamas, 2 weeks after Hurricane Dorian left widespread devastation. Antonio Guterres appeared visibly shaken after his flyover of the islands. He then thanked the humanitarian workers on site for all of their work. His visit also coincided with the arrival of Tropical Storm Humberto to the already battered islands, which has complicated search and rescue efforts. Experts warn that the storm is likely to become a hurricane in the coming hours. Hurricane Dorian made landfall in the Bahamas on September 1st and caused significant damage, leaving at least 50 people dead, as at least 1,300 more remain unaccounted for.
There is in the international community the idea that middle-income countries should not be supported. It's a wrong idea, especially that middle-income countries have high levels of vulnerability to external shocks they are not responsible for. And so I hope that the international community will be able, now obviously is the moment of still rescue in some situations, but essentially humanitarian aid, but then there will be reconstruction, building resilience, recovery, and this will require massive investments from the government, from the people, and of course international support will be absolutely essential.
Recently released photos of Venezuelan opposition figure Juan Guaido in the company of Colombian narco paramilitaries confirm accusations by Venezuela's government that the right-wing opposition has long had a working relationship with criminal groups. We have more in this report.
Opposition lawmaker Juan Guaido is once again under investigation by the prosecutor's office due to his links to paramilitary groups, who allegedly helped him exit the country on February 22nd by evading migration points. But there are also others in his inner circle who have close links to these criminal gangs.
Se trató de una operación de extracción.
Guaido's crossing into Colombia in February this year was an extraction operation by Colombian narco-paramilitaries. They provided him with security and escorts to cross the border from La Palmita in the Venezuelan state of Táchira to Puerto Santander in Colombia. The paramilitaries placed these communities under a 24-hour curfew to avoid Guaidó being seen. That was part of the agreement.
Por más de 24 horas a toque de queda paramilitar.
Mira, tengo la seguridad.
I am certain that it was former Colombian President Álvaro Uribe who ordered the rastrojos to help and protect the Queen of the South, Juan Guaidó.
Meanwhile, Colombian President Iván Duque confirmed that protection was provided to Guaidó.
When President Guaidó came to Colombia at the start of this year, we helped him enter Colombia safely. We welcome him here and provide protection for him during his stay.
For his part, Guaidó tried to downplay this scandal by saying that everyone he meets asks for pictures, but he failed to explain why one of the men was armed. According to the government, in just the past 2 months, 62 heavily armed paramilitaries were captured in Venezuelan territory, while another 12 died in clashes.
There are 4 paramilitary groups at the border: the Rastrojos Gang, the Urabeños, the Gulf Cartel, and another cult line which is led by a highly dangerous individual who goes by the alias El Paisa. These gangs had been taking control of the border and were behind many horrible crimes.
Still, the United States and their allies continue their attempts at ousting President Nicolás Maduro. The latest one is calling for the activation of the Inter-American Treaty of Reciprocal Assistance at the OAS, which could open the door for military intervention.
Every policy used against us was first planned by the U.S. State Department. They are the ones giving orders to the Venezuelan opposition and to subservient governments like Chile, Colombia, and Paraguay. We have said it countless times. The Rio Treaty is a mechanism used by the United States to move forward in conquering Latin America once again. Historically, it has proven to be detrimental to Latin America, as it was during the Malvinas War when the U.S. supported Great Britain instead of Argentina.
So far, Cuba, Uruguay, and Mexico have opposed a military option, as proposed by the United States, as Guaidó's allies keep quiet about his close relationship to criminal paramilitary groups.
This week, youth of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela celebrates 11 years since its founding. The Secretary General of the JPSUV, Rodbexo Pelea, presided over the celebratory act alongside President Nicolás Maduro. President Maduro stressed that Venezuelan youth should focus on 3 central lines: study, production, and the defense of the nation, and asked the organized youth to present their proposals for government actions and policies and for regular criticism and self-criticism. He also approved the activation of 24 spaces and resources for youth to produce animal protein. Secretary General of the JPSUV stressed that the youth's main tasks are currently recruitment, organization, training, production, and defense of the homeland.
We must be at the vanguard, at the front of the production battle. We set out to be a self-sustaining generation. We will propel our country on economic and productive development, creating from our conscience a new productive culture. We are linking to the experience of our party, and we've been deployed to the vanguard. President, from the direction of our party, we are following this very important policy. And we solicit your approval, President, with all of the necessary institutions for the youth of the party, to boost 24 productive spaces for the production of animal protein and its distribution through the local committees for supply and production system, so that we can distribute protein among our youth organization and above all to our people.
Dejaremos de ser la juventud del Partido Socialista Unido de Venezuela. Leales siempre, hermanos y hermanas. Leales siempre.
President Maduro also announced the creation and commencement of academic activities of the Antonio José de Sucre Youth Political Formation School for the formation of new PSUV leaders. He stressed that in times like these, the JPSUV cannot be sectarian. He urged all to be receptive and unified with the youth of the Communist Party of Venezuela, the Tupamaro, and other revolutionary groups.
A pesar de que estos medios internacionales que están aquí no
Despite the
sacan ni una
Venezuelan
sola
media
imagen de
ignoring
la
the march,
marcha.
having not broadcast a single image, despite all of the international media which are here not publishing one single photo of the march, I ask if the opposition that Vende Patria de Venezuela held a march, which was just half the size of the march we held today, which was just the youth, if that would be on the front page worldwide. Great march against Maduro in Venezuela.
Y aquí estamos victoriosos.
And here we are victorious, even though we are made invisible by CNN, Fox News, and all of the world's media. We are invisible to them. But we continue in the streets. We're invisible to them, but the people are mobilized, conscious, firm, full of hope and love for the homeland.
Pero seguimos en las calles. Somos invisibles para ellos.
Cuba's president of the Councils of State and Ministers, Miguel Diaz-Canel, participated in the official inauguration of the five-star category Hotel Meliá International of Veradero on Saturday. This new location protects the beach, guaranteeing sustainability, the protection of the environment, and is friendly with its natural surroundings. The opening was attended by ambassadors, investors, builders, and tourism sector workers, and coincides with a somewhat delicate energy situation that the island is experiencing. That was elaborated on by Cuban president and other leaders in recent days. Cuba's tourism minister said that the inaugural act is evidence that the country will not be overcome by intimidation amid the U.S. blockade and continues to develop. We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Welcome back. Polling stations have closed in Tunisia and vote counting is underway as the country voted in presidential elections. Authorities have said that official results can be expected on Tuesday at the earliest. The race to the top job is dominated by four candidates: Prime Minister Youssef Chaed, media mogul Nabil Karoui, who is detained under charges of money laundering, independent candidate Kais Saied, and Defense Minister Abdelkarim Zebidi. The election was moved up from November after the death of Beji Caid Essebsi, the first democratically elected president since the Tunisian Revolution of 2011.
I hope that the country will have a president who will work for us, who will preserve our country and have his own decisions and not follow parties and alliances.
It's true that it is a historical day. This is why everyone must vote. You must have your place in Tunisia. As for the organization, it is well done. I must say, though, that there are not too many people. It's a shame because voting is necessary.
After months of mass protests in Algeria and the resignation of the former president Abdelaziz Bouteflika, a date has been set for presidential elections. The announcement comes 2 days after tens of thousands marched in the capital to demand that the ruling elite also resign before any new election.
I have decided by the constitutional powers vested in me to announce the date of presidential elections, Thursday, December 12th of 2019. Consequently, and according to constitutional and legislative principles, I signed today a presidential decree calling on the electoral body. In the same occasion, I have invited the political elite, national characters, and civil society to engage in an inclusive discussion in order to reach consensus on solutions to everything related to the upcoming presidential election.
West African leaders have pledged $1 billion towards the fight against the increasing threat of Islamic militancy in the region. The 15 members of the West African bloc, along with the presidents of Mauritania and Chad, gathered for an extraordinary summit in Burkina Faso to address growing insecurity in the region. The leaders also called on the United Nations to strengthen its MINUSMA peacekeeping mission, which has been based in Mali since 2013. Groups with links to the Islamic State have strengthened their foothold across the arid Sahel region, stoking ethnic violence, especially in Mali and Burkina Faso.
The international community is the cause of the Libyan crisis. We are all suffering the consequences of the Libyan crisis in the Sahel region as well as in the LAC region of Chad. So now is not the time to divert our gaze away from the Sahel and Lake Chad. The international community has a duty to participate in a battle to safeguard peace and security.
Foreign leaders and supporters of Zimbabwe's founding father, Robert Mugabe, gathered on Saturday at the National Stadium to say their goodbyes. Mugabe, who died at the age of 95, will be buried in a mausoleum at the Heroes Acre in Harare in about 30 days. Mugabe ruled Zimbabwe for 37 years until he was ousted by the army in November 2017. He died in Singapore a week ago. African leaders and senior officials from Cuba, Russia, and China have praised Mugabe as a pan-African hero for his past as a colonial-era guerrilla leader. The president of Iran, Hassan Rouhani, has arrived in Ankara, Turkey, ahead of a meeting on Monday with his Turkish and Russian counterparts. The meeting between the three leaders hopes to try to secure a lasting truce in Idlib, at the last remaining territory held by rebels seeking to overthrow Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Over the past few months, the Syrian army has regained control of most of the land they lost to rebels during the catastrophic 8-year war. Before leaving for Ankara, President Rouhani criticized U.S. presence in Syria, calling it invasive, illegal, and interfering.
U.S. presence in the region is invasive, illegal, and interfering, continuously keeping this part of the Syrian region unsafe. The issues of this region should be resolved by the countries of the region through dialogue and compromise.
John Bolton's unceremonious exit from the White House earlier this week has created some uncertainty about what route the Trump administration will now follow when it comes to foreign policy, in particular when it comes to Iran. Our correspondent in Washington, Alina Duarte, has more.
Expectations are high for what's next in the U.S. foreign policy after the removal of far-right hunk John Bolton as National Security Advisor. Many wonder how will the U.S. relationships with North Korea, Afghanistan, Cuba, Venezuela, and Iran develop now. And in the latter cases, the question is even more complex as bilateral tensions have been on the rise, given since the U.S. walked away from the 2015 nuclear deal and reimposed numerous economic sanctions.
There's this maximum pressure campaign that Trump keeps talking about, and it's a series of executive orders and laws that basically cut off Iran and specific individuals from the world financial system. So it's very hard for Iran to...
Since May of 2018, oil production in Iran has fallen sharply, dropping by 40%. And the damage is not only getting worse, as exemptions granted by the U.S. to oil buyers in order to do business with Iran have recently expired. Experts agree that the mainstream media has been instrumental in spreading anti-Iran propaganda.
Most people don't understand what sanctions are, and they think they're targeting specific people. They also think that Iran is, building a nuclear weapon to attack people, and, there's not much evidence of the latter. Iran has, entered into the Iran deal. European countries were very happy with the Iran deal because it allowed them to import Iranian oil.
One of the main supporters of this so-called maximum pressure campaign against Iran was former National Security Advisor John Bolton. But despite his exit, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has said that the U.S. strategy will remain the same. But the Iran government has fired back at this.
U.S. citizens need to understand that warmongers are not beneficial to them. That country needs to abandon war and their maximum pressure policies.
Policies that are also being used against a nation like Venezuela, and that, according to the D.C.-based Center for Economic and Policy Research, have caused the deaths of at least 40,000 Venezuelans.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Violent protests reignited this weekend in Hong Kong. On Sunday, protesters tore down and set fire to a banner celebrating the upcoming 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China on October 1st. They also once again trashed metro stations and lit fires on streets, while a small group of protesters gathered outside of the British consulate, calling on Britain to rein in China. Police were deployed in hopes of dispersing protesters, but violence soon erupted. Footage from Harcourt Road shows protesters throwing back tear gas canisters and hurling firebombs at police, who respond with water cannons. Earlier, I had the opportunity to speak with Beijing-based journalist Ian Goodrum. He's a senior editor at China Daily. I asked him for his take on this highly debated subject. Bonus question, Ian. Is China socialist?
Oh, okay, we're getting into this. I would say yes. China would say yes. There's a lot of reasons for that would take a long time to get into the specifics of it. But yes, we have seen over the course of the last 70 years a long and steady progression in the living standards of the people here, the quality of life, the prioritization of the people over profits, over the exploitation of the working class by a ruling class. Especially in the last few decades, we have seen huge upticks in living standards that are all brought about by the prioritization of the people over basic capitalist profit seeking. I believe, as many other countries do, the relationship that many socialist countries in South America or socialist aspiring countries in South America have had with China, the positive relationship, the assistance and aid that they have received, is but one way in which we can see what China is prioritizing and what that means in terms of broader context of what makes a country socialist or not socialist.
And now we bring you more stories from around the world.
Iran has dismissed accusations by the U.S. Secretary of State that they were behind drone attacks on the Saudi Arabian oil installations, which knocked out half of the kingdom's oil production. According to the Iran's foreign ministry, these claims by the U.S. are incomprehensible and meaningless and point to attempt by Washington to retaliate against the Islamic Republic. While Yemen's Houthi rebels have already claimed responsibility for the drone attacks, Mike Pompeo has said there is no evidence that the attacks came from Yemen. In China, a variety of activities were staged across Guangdong province over a 3-day Mid-Autumn Festival holiday to celebrate the special festival of family reunion. The celebration is also held to express good wishes for the upcoming 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. The park was adorned with more than 100,000 flower pots, creating a visual feast for the visitors all day long.
This is the first time that I've boarded a boat for moon gazing. I'm very happy. Thanks to the great support of the government, the countryside has changed a lot.
At least 12 people were killed on Sunday and more than a dozen others went missing after a tourist boat capsized in the Govt River in southern India. The boat was carrying more than 60 people, including passengers and crew, when it capsized. Several tourists were rescued by the personnel from the National Disaster Response Force, and a Navy helicopter was sent to the area to help rescuers.
And today we leave you with a unique rendering of one of Venezuela's best-known melodies played by drummers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines as part of the Venezuela Challenge.